Sharecropper, a person who works fields rented from a landowner and pays the rent and repays loans by turning over to the landowner a share of the crops. Tenant farmer, a farmer who works land owned by someone else and pays rent in cash or as a share of the crop. Scalawag, a derogatory term for Southerners who were working with the North to buy up land from desperate Southerners. Carpetbaggers, a Northerner who went to the South immediately after the Civil War, especially one who tried to gain political advantage or other advantages from the disorganized situation in Southern states. Freedmen's Bureau. The Bureau's focus was to provide food, medical care, administer justice, manage abandoned and confiscated property, regulate labor, and establish schools. Gettysburg Address, a speech given by Abraham Lincoln after the Battle of Gettysburg, in which he praised the bravery of Union soldiers and renewed his commitment to winning the Civil War, supported the ideals of self-government and human rights. Reconstruction, the period after the Civil War in the United States when the Southern states were reorganized and reintegrated into the Union. Foraging, behavior associated with recognizing, searching for, capturing, and consuming food. Black Codes, laws denying most legal rights to newly freed slaves, passed by Southern states following the Civil War. Civil War amendments. Compromise of 1877 ended Reconstruction. Republicans promise 1. Remove military from South. 2. Appoint Democrat to cabinet. 3. Federal money for railroad construction and levees on Mississippi River. Lecompton Constitution, trickery pro-slavery document aimed to bring Kansas into the Union but was blocked by Stephen A. Douglas. Compromise of 1850, agreement designed to ease tensions caused by the expansion of slavery into Western territories. Compromise of 1850, a confederacy, a loose union of independent states, name of government used by the Southern states that seceded during the Civil War. Free Soil Party. This party was formed on a platform favoring the Wilmot Proviso and free land for settlers. They were a group of moderate abolitionists. They did not oppose slavery in the South but opposed the expansion of slavery into the new territories. The Republican Party was formed from this idea. Border states. States bordering the North: Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. They were slave states but did not secede. Martial law, type of rule in which the military is in charge and citizens' rights are suspended. Blockade runner, ship that runs through a blockade, usually to smuggle goods through a protected area. Martial law, referendum, a state-level method of direct legislation that gives voters a chance to approve or disapprove proposed legislation or a proposed constitutional amendment. Emancipation Proclamation, issued by Abraham Lincoln on September 22, 1862, it declared that all slaves in the Confederate States would be free. Republican Party, organized in 1854 by anti-slavery Whigs, Democrats, and Free Soilers in response to the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, nominated John C. Fremont for president in 1856 and Abraham Lincoln in 1860. Insurrection, rebellion or revolt against a government or similarly established Kansas-Nebraska Act, 1854, created Nebraska and Kansas as states and gave the people in those territories the right to choose to be a free or slave state through popular sovereignty. Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe in 1853, that highly influenced England's view on the American Deep South and slavery, a novel promoting abolition, intensified sectional conflict. Underground Railroad, 1830, Harriet Tubman, a system that helped enslaved African Americans follow a network of escape routes out of the South to freedom in the North. Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869 at Promontory, Utah. It linked the Eastern Railroad system with California's railroad system, revolutionizing transportation in the West. Secession, the formal withdrawal of a state from the Union. Popular sovereignty, a government in which the people rule by their own consent. 49ers, Easterners who flocked to California after the discovery of gold there. They established claims all over Northern California and overwhelmed the existing government. Arrived in 1849. Harriet Beecher Stowe, American author and daughter of Lyman Beecher. She was an abolitionist and author of the famous anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet Tubman, United States abolitionist born a slave on a plantation in Maryland and became a famous conductor on the Underground Railroad leading other slaves to freedom in the North. John Brown, abolitionist who was hanged after leading an unsuccessful raid at Harpers Ferry, Virginia. Dred Scott, a black slave, had lived with his master for 5 years in Illinois and Wisconsin Territory. Backed by interested abolitionists, he sued for freedom on the basis of his long residence on free soil. The ruling on the case was that he was a black slave and not a citizen, so he had no rights. James Buchanan, the 15th President of the United States. He tried to maintain a balance between pro-slavery and anti-slavery factions, but his moderate views angered radicals in both North and South, and he was unable to forestall the secession of South Carolina on December 20, 1860. Stephen A. Douglas, senator from Illinois who ran for president against Abraham Lincoln, wrote the Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Freeport Doctrine. Ulysses S. Grant, an American general and the 18th President of the United States. He achieved international fame as the leading Union general in the American Civil War. Robert E. Lee, Confederate general who had opposed secession but did not believe the Union should be held together by force. Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, helped preserve the United States by leading the defeat of the secessionist Confederacy, an outspoken opponent of the expansion of slavery, shooed by John Wilkes Booth. Jefferson Davis, an American statesman and politician who served as President of the Confederate States of America for its entire history from 1861 to 1865. Radical Republicans. These were a small group of people in 1865 who supported black suffrage. They were led by Senator Charles Sumner and Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. They supported the abolition of slavery and a demanding Reconstruction policy during the war and after. Ku Klux Klan, a secret society created by white Southerners in 1866 that used terror and violence to keep African Americans from obtaining their civil rights. Ku Klux Klan, a secret society. John Wilkes Booth was an American stage actor who, as part of a conspiracy plot, assassinated Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., on April 14, 1865. Andrew Johnson. William Tecumseh Sherman, second most important Union general who introduced total war in the March to the Sea. He destroyed crops, towns, and farms everywhere he went. Gold Rush, a period from 1848 to 1856 when thousands of people came to California in order to search for gold. Wilmot Proviso, law passed in 1846 that banned slavery in any territories won by the United States from Mexico. Compromise of 1850, agreement designed to ease tensions caused by the expansion of slavery into Western territories. Fugitive Slave Act, a law that made it a crime to help runaway slaves, allowed for the arrest of escaped slaves in areas where slavery was illegal and required the return to slaveholders. Caning of Senator Sumner. Caning of Senator Sumner. Harper's Ferry, John Brown's scheme to invade the South with armed slaves backed by sponsoring Northern abolitionists seized the federal arsenal. Brown and remnants were caught by Robert E. Lee and the U.S. Marines. Brown was hanged. Crittenden's Compromise, compromise that would guarantee slavery where it already existed and would reinstate the Missouri Compromise line extending it to California. It did not pass. Fort Sumter, federal fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. The Confederate attack on the fort marked the start of the Civil War. Appomattox Courthouse, April 1865. The Virginia town where Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant in 1865, ending the Civil War. Fred Scott Decision, 1857. Decision by Supreme Court deciding that African Americans were property, not people. Lower South, states of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Upper South, designation used in the Civil War encompassing the states of Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Antietam, the first major battle in the American Civil War to take place on Northern soil. It was the bloodiest single-day battle in American history, with almost 23,000 casualties. After this win for the North, Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation. Sherman's March to the Sea. During the Civil War, a devastating total war military campaign led by Union General William Tecumseh Sherman that involved marching 60,000 Union troops through Georgia from Atlanta to Savannah and destroying everything along their way. Election of 1860. Lincoln, the Republican candidate, won because the Democratic Party was split over slavery. As a result, the South no longer felt like it has a voice in politics and a number of states seceded from the Union. Pickett's Charge, a failed Confederate attack during the Civil War led by General George Pickett at the Battle of Gettysburg.